Hello, hello, hello. Hope you guys are having a good day. I'm excited for this interview. Claire, what's up, Lisa? How you guys doing? This should be a really good one. What's up, Zeb? Noah? What's up, Kaya? This is going to be an excellent interview for anybody that is interested in playing college soccer. What's up, Kim? What's up, Hats? Welcome, Jordan. Why is it going to be such a good, useful interview? So Peter, the guy I'm interviewing, Peter Lowry, he's coached. We'll find out more information. But real quick background on him. Not only did he play college and professionally, he's coached for the last, I think, like 6 or 7 years, three Division I schools. So he's worked in different environments. So he has a wide spectrum of kind of like what different colleges look for. So it's not like he's just been with one program. He's been with 3 different Division I schools. And being with 3 different Division I schools in different parts of the country with different academic standards is going to be huge. He's going to really be able to help with what specific things different schools are looking for. All right, so I'm looking forward to it. We've had some good conversations about it. This is a little bit different than actually most interviews. Most interviews, I'm just like, I come up with questions and just kind of go from there. And he's like, you know what, let me come up with the questions. So I was like, all right, go for it. Because he obviously spends a ton of time on this exact topic, recruiting players. For those that don't know, college assistant coaches spend a ton of time. Welcome, Peter. Let's do this on the recruiting piece. What's up, Raby? What's up, Xander? What's up, Autumn? What's up, Mia?
Hey,
Peter, what's up?
how's it going, guys?
It's going well. It's going well. I was just kind of just talking about how I'm excited for this for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, your playing background, well, like playing at Santa Clara and then also playing professionally. But then you've spent like the last, 6, 7 years kind of not only coaching Division I, but 3 different programs in 3 different areas of the country with 3, completely different colleges. So I think that's something that's definitely unique. So anyway, how you
Yeah,
doing?
doing well. Just
Baby sleeping?
baby sleeping. Yeah, we get a sleeping child, which we got an 11-month-old little girl. So when she sleeps, all is well.
Yeah. So that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Well, cool. Let's get it started. So first off, let's start with thanks for being here, and let's start with
yeah.
kind of your background. All right. So tell me about like your childhood, and then like your club soccer career, then college, and then pro.
So I grew up in Northern California. I'm a Sacramento guy. Spent a lot of time with my parents driving around to games everywhere. I played for San Juan Soccer Club growing up, which is a pretty big club in Sacramento, one of the kind of major couple clubs. In high school, moved down. My family moved to Irvine, California, so I played for Irvine Strikers, which is another large club down in Southern California. Um, it was a good experience for me, and it was a very, very, very good club at the time. Um, had the opportunity to be in and around some youth national teams growing up, and um, ended up moving back to Sacramento for my senior year of high school. Went to Santa Clara University, had a great time. Obviously, met you. We had a good run of years there and lots of success. And um, then I went on. Was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to go play a few years of pro in MLS in Chicago and in Portland. And wish I would have got more years, but really enjoyed my time there. And then I started coaching collegiately. So at St. Mary's in the Bay Area on the men's side, was there for 2 seasons. Uh, Actually met my wife, and let's say she was living in San Francisco, so um, and was in the Army. So we ended up moving to Nashville, Tennessee, and she was stationed at a base just outside Nashville, Fort Campbell. And I was fortunate enough to get a job at Lipscomb coaching on the men's side and another small D1. It's a Christian school. Really enjoyed our time in Nashville, and then she got a residency match in Philadelphia and was fortunate enough to get a job after our 3 years in Nashville up in uh, Philadelphia at University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school, and was there for 3 seasons. So that's a little bit about me.
Dang, been all over the country. So let's
A little bit
start it
everywhere.
off. Let's start off. Do you have somewhere you want to start this conversation? Anything do you want, or just kind of just get it going?
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff I'm going to try to speak pretty quickly and cover a lot of stuff because there's a lot of stuff that I feel like is really important. I also want to let you guys know what it's like from a college coach's side in terms of somebody that maybe give a little bit of insight into the way that a college coach looks at players, thinks, operates, and maybe that gives a little bit better perspective into how to get recruited and how to make our jobs easy. I think there'll be 3 or 4 things that come up with, um, the easier you make a college coach's job, the better it'll be for you in the recruiting side. So, um, you know, I think the biggest thing is obviously that student athlete needs to be proactive. A college coach, for me, doesn't necessarily want to talk to parents until I have to. Um, you know, being a coach, you're about to enter a 4 year, maybe 5 year relationship with a player of trying to help them develop and become better. And that really starts in that recruiting process. If I can't have a real good conversation with somebody and get to know them over the course of more than just a couple interactions, then I know as I get to know somebody how it's going to be to coach them, how it's going to be to interact with them. And I just think not enough people drive that process. And on the flip side, it's our job. It's my job to sit there and receive emails, to track players. You're not bombarding coaches. You almost are never, I think very, very rarely is somebody bombarding us too much with communication. You can almost never overdo your communication. And those that communicate really well, things typically end up going really well for them, or they get clarity from that school to just say, hey, this is where I'm at with this player. They've been constant and good with this communication, and they're going to get back to you at some point when they can and provide that feedback that this is where we stand. And it's always a good idea to err on over communication, over interest, and a player driven process of that.
Define what would you even define as communicating a sufficient amount?
Yeah. So, for me, there's obviously when you can contact a coach and they can respond to you. So after a certain date, right, which is, going into that junior year, and then before then. And I typically say an email or two a month, even before that, I've done my homework. I have my list of anywhere from 15 to 30 schools with some safety schools in there. I know about those schools. They have matched what my interest is soccer wise and matched what my interest is academically. So it's a fit. If you want to be a undergraduate business major or marketing or finance or accounting and you're emailing Cal, they don't have an undergraduate business program. So you're not going to go there and get an undergraduate business degree in marketing. You're going to get an economics degree. And that's going to be something that you need to know about. And it's not just about the soccer piece. It has to be an all-around fit. And I feel like too many people, and you're seeing it in a big way in the transfers, where transfer numbers are starting to really, really go up, where, the more you know about a program, about coaches, about players, the school, and you've done your homework and driven your process, and the same with the flip side of a coach getting to know you, typically it ends up going pretty well for those people. When you get things like rash decisions, quick decisions, pressured situations with 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, that typically ends with bad decisions and transfers. And, one of the biggest things that people just don't know about is, oh, I get free transfers. Well, you only get one free transfer. And when you transfer, you're going to have a process of maybe a couple months, probably less, of getting to know the next place you go. And you really only get one. And then if you transfer again, you got to sit for a year. And almost nobody takes somebody who's transferred twice, let alone gives them scholarship money. It's just too big of a risk. So, it's something where you might as well do the work now, do your homework, engage in your process, and it's not too hard to email 15, 20, 25 schools and start really getting to know them. And that'll help naturally feed who's interested, who's not, who's coming to see you, who's talking to your club coaches, or, not. And then those schools fall out of that list and, they'll communicate that with you.
Okay. So just to recap, you'd recommend having a list of 15 to 30 schools, and then there's some safety schools. And then of those schools,
Yes.
obviously it's not just like random schools, the schools that you're interested in soccer wise that, fit your other needs, whether it's a big school, small school, private, public, your degree, stuff like that. And then you'd recommend communicating 1 to 2 times a month with those schools. Starting when? When would you recommend emailing 1 or 2 times a month?
The earlier the better. Honestly, there, especially on the women's
Freshman year?
side, yeah, absolutely. And why not? So what college coaches have is every single program has one of 3 software systems. And these software systems, when you email one of our schools, about 99% of the time, you're going into one of these database management software systems. So your name, your grad year, some key information about you. Typically, at the very least, you have to have a first and last name and a grad year and an email. Whatever you're throwing in that first email to us, like my job at St. Mary's, and email all of the coaches on staff, because I've been at places where the head coach drives all the recruiting, other places where it's a second assistant or first assistant or recruiting coordinator. You just really almost never know. Even at Penn, we had a volunteer assistant who plugged in a lot of our data entry into the software system and managed anywhere from 10,000 athletes at any given time. But what that basically is going to be is when you start emailing me and you give me an email once a month, hey, this is what's going on with me. I'm really interested. That first email is the easiest to do. And you should absolutely, especially now, even in COVID, send that email. You're going into the system. You're going to get camp emails. Hey, I have a tournament coming up, or this is what's going on with me, or I just got, my final transcript. Here's my updated GPA. Here's a couple clips I just played. Whatever it is, there are updates that you can send once a month, or maybe more. Maybe it's less now, but the person that starts that process and there's a track record of interest and emails, especially when COVID returns, they're the ones with good, diligent communication. Hey, yep, that person's at the top of the list that we got to see at that next Thanksgiving or Christmas showcase or whatever it is. So it's really important to email often, give lots of updates, show a lot of interest. In my own process, I was inside the U18 national team at one point, and programs didn't know. Even for me, they're not beating down my door. I had to show programs interest, or else they wouldn't recruit me. They didn't just assume, not everyone just, even for top players, no one just walks in and says, here's all your scholarship. Yep, full scholarship everywhere, full scholarship, full scholarship. It just doesn't happen. I had my list of 20 schools, and I started going after them, some with interest and some without. And that was fine. And it naturally kind of whittled down. And the more I got to know about schools and what I wanted to study and the right fit for me, it wasn't going to be a big school. This was what I wanted to study. Okay, here's where things started to really fit. It became a much better process for me in trying to decide. But it was still something that was very much player driven by myself.
Got it. So it has to be player driven. Have to have a relationship with the coaches. Have to do the work consistently. In your emails, what specifically you put in? Especially the first email, I gotta think name, grad year, grades, position, team. What other information is relevant versus not relevant? Do you get some stuff in the email you're like, oh my gosh, I don't need this? Does that bug you? What should emails look like?
Yeah, so if you think about the really highly desirable places, those people are getting inundated with emails. So at Penn, maybe I got 50 emails a day, and I had to go through all that information. So less is more. If they're all of them had highlight videos, which I would recommend that you have a highlight video, and let's say each one of them was about 10 minutes, which they all tended to be about 10 minutes.
10-minute
That's
highlight videos?
500. Oh, all. Oh, absolutely. They were almost never
Did you
2 to
watch all
3
10 minutes of
minutes.
all
They
those
they tended
videos?
to. Well, no, there's not enough hours in the day. That's my point. Is I would only
So how
really
much? What
watch
do
the
you
first two
you
to
watch for
three
like
minutes.
30 seconds and yeah.
Yeah, literally. It's really important. So like you're saying, less is more. I don't need to know that you started playing when you were 6. I don't need to know, all these little details that are probably not relevant. I need to know your name, your grad, your contact info, your academic information, because that's all going in my database, and that's how I'm going to track you over the course of a year or 2 years, even if it's a couple months. That's the important stuff, and I'm just going to keep updating that. Um, yeah, important tournaments. Hey, here's what our schedule might be the week before that Thanksgiving showcase. I'm going to get you my schedule. I'm going to check in with you, afterwards, or even if they can't email you back, send it. They're not going to say, hey, stop sending us stuff. They're just going to say, okay, they're going to that surf at this time. Great. That's a tag in my database, in my recruiting software. Here's all the kids that said they were going to surf. Here's my list. These are people that have shown a lot of interest. Boom, boom, boom. Here's the schedule I made. I'm gonna start matching up with who's emailed and who's shown interest with my schedule and what I want to go see and what we're looking for as a program. So it's really important to keep it concise. Less is more. Think about, especially at big schools, at St. Mary's, maybe we got 10 a day. At Penn, it was probably more like 50. And it's almost impossible. That's why these databases are so important, is because you have to manage 10,000 kids, even if you're not interested in half of them. You also don't know that about freshmen yet. Maybe you are going to be interested in them in a year or 2 years. Um, you don't know. So that's why we use that. And that's why I would say that basic information is the most important. If they are interested, the older you get and they want more, that's a good thing. That's why I always say highlight videos. I'd rather it be 1 to 2, 3 minutes even, and just have it be the most amazing stuff. It's like an appetizer in a meal. You get a little something, you're like, oh, I want to see more, as opposed to, hey, I'm getting into the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh minute of this, and you know, I I don't know. It looks pretty average to me. That and this is the 18th one I've watched today.
What
So
are the
does
things
that answer that
specifically you're
question?
looking for in a it does, but I want to go over next like the highlight video. What are the specific things that people should put in there? Like we talked
Yeah.
about this a little bit, which I thought was super useful.
Yeah. So you absolutely front load a highlight video, because highlight videos, a domestic player will never get recruited off a highlight video. All it is supposed to pique interest. Like I said, that appetizer where it's like tasting something. You're like, okay, I really want more. I want to see more. I want to know more. I want to see this player play live. I'm going to email them and get video if it's COVID right now, or you know, it's really important to front load those things. So, you know, think about the things that you're best at as a player. Is it that speed or athleticism? Show that. Show you blowing by somebody on a clip. Is it your left foot? Is it, you know, and mix it up with a little bit of stuff. Look, it's really easy if you're a goal scorer. Show you scoring different types of goals, headers, surfaces, free kicks, whatever it is, and have it be the most amazing stuff early, and then sit there and really be good about, here's the 5% highlight. Maybe it starts with your name and your grad year and that stuff, but it's probably in the email anyway. It just is really simple and an easy clicking link, like a YouTube click. Boom, I'm right there. It's 3 minutes. It's front loaded with you doing some amazing stuff. It's not monotonous or mundane, and it's like, wow, I just saw 10 great clips. I need to see more of this.
Okay, let's go real quick. Goalkeeper, what do you want to see? Give me like specific, like what do you want to see from a keeper?
Yeah, so it's more than you think. And this is a huge thing in college soccer. Can you handle things in the air? Can you command your box? So handling crosses, shot stopping is not the only thing I want to see. It's probably not you just doing footwork in some cones and being like, look at my footwork, and then sending that in. It's, you know, kicking, punting. It's, uh, oh man, like, you have to think of maybe the 5 or 6 areas that really matter inside of goalkeeping, and sit there and, can you handle a hard shot? Can you organize a defense in front of you? And you have, just even if it's one clip of you organizing, or you coming out for a great cross, or, the tremendous double save,
Okay.
or, that kind of stuff.
How about a center back?
Yeah. So center backs for me, one of the most important things is winning a ball in the air. You know, like it or not, college soccer is a pretty vertical game. So, being able to win a header, so important. It's one of the first things Notre Dame looks for in a center back. They just, on the men's side, they just won't take somebody that can't win headers. Probably shows that they have some sort of either size or in very good athletic ability in terms of speed and agility, passing ability out of the back. And when I say passing ability out of the back, I don't mean a 5 or 10 yard pass to your other center back who has no pressure on them. To me, that kind of stuff for any field player is pretty irrelevant. We can all do that. Like, you passing 20 yards to your other center back with no pressure, that's not an indication of high
Yeah.
level player. Indication of high level player, forwards pressuring you, you have to step through pressure and then maybe make that pass. You have to hit a ball 30, 40, 50 yards over distance. You, uh, probably defending one-on-one against a good looking player, not somebody that, looks like they're playing up 3 years and you just like easily swipe them off the ball. Clips that are of higher level. So not like high school game that you're winning 10-0 and this is just a cakewalk, but maybe that really good ECNL game, or that really high level NPL game that you're playing in, and it's like, okay, this looks intense. There's something on the line. There's energy to it. It's on a good field. It's, those types of things, and you have that really good individual defending moment, or two, or slide tackle, or, that toughness, whatever your attributes are. There's little things inside of each of that where maybe you showcase a little bit better, and you're finding those.
Got it. Okay. Lastly, I think how about like an interior that doesn't score a lot of goals and it's not super athletic?
I think that's the hardest highlight video. I was a 6'8" for a big chunk of my career, and a 10 as well. The 10 is the easiest, and the 9, you show goals, you show creating goals. The biggest things for us as sixes is that person probably takes a little, like a goalkeeper. We go watch goalkeepers, and you watch one game and they touch the ball maybe 20 times. If you just watch a half, it's even less maybe. So it becomes a harder thing to sit there and say, yes, I know this is a 6 or an 8 or an interior center mid that I really like, just off a highlight video. I probably want to see somebody that's a really good distributor and builder of attacks, not just 5 yard tiki-taka passes, but somebody that can hit some entry passes, break lines with passes, somebody that's a really good defender, organizer, leader, somebody that doesn't mind doing some dirty work, organizing guys in front of them. And when I say guys, I mean girls as well. I mean, it's one of those kind of unsung hero positions that I actually feel like is a little bit difficult to highlight. But, again, somebody that is going to sit there and win headers, because you're going to sit there and take 20 goal kicks a game, 30 goal kicks a game, and it's going to land right on that 6 or 10 or 8's head. And somebody that's not fearless to go up there and win headers. And inside of that, again, you're thinking about those components of your game that you really want to highlight. One of the things that come to mind for me, or, when we talk about these defensive players, I like to really go watch a game, and then I like to get in contact with a player that I went to go watch and ask them how they did. And especially if it's a defender, and let's say they lost the game 3-2, and how'd you play? And we're talking about sixes, outside backs, center backs. Good. I completed a lot of my passes, got an assist, had some good entries, really tried to join the attack as much as possible. And it's like, okay, so what did that player just talk about almost exclusively? Attacking.
Offense.
One of the major functions, of defensive players is preventing goals, almost first and foremost. And while it's very sexy inside the game to talk about attacking, it's also something that is kind of that lost art of the ability to defend and prevent goals. And it's such a paramount piece of college soccer that it typically is one of those things that, well, the center back's job isn't necessarily to get assists, it's to prevent goals. So, it's not just about your time on the ball. It's actually more about sometimes your time off the ball. So, those are things that I like to sit there and question defensive players as we sit here and talk about some of them.
Okay. I like it. So highlight video is important, short and sweet. Highlight the best parts of your game. What else is important? So obviously the highlight video, it piques interest. How about like websites? I know some people have websites. Like last week, one of the Mia had a website. Is that something that's valuable? How valuable? Like recruiting websites. How valuable are these things? Recruiting websites, making your own website, other things like that. What are the things you guys use?
Yeah, recruiting websites are nice because all your information's, again, one click away. I can see your name, grad years, academic info, soccer info. It can be really detailed, whether it's your own website or you pay $3,000 to have somebody put it together for you. And by the way, those places are going to be emailing college coaches as well. And those players are probably either going in a database or, we don't feel bad about blasting people that send college. So if NCSA emails us, I'm blasting that email with camp stuff because they're just blasting us. It's not personalized really. It's just, hey, this is an interested player. Again, it makes our job a little bit easier, but you can just also email. I think it's up to the resources of the family what they want to do. I'm also of the mindset that all that information is great for check-in emails, and nobody deletes their emails. They just sit there and archive this information either in their email or in that database for recruiting purposes. And they can sit there and go back. When I'm about to get on a call with a kid, I'm sitting there going through my notes. I've seen him play, at Penn, all 3 or 4 of us that would see players, whether it be at camp or out on the recruiting trail, would be putting notes in that database and talking about, okay, this is when I saw him play. This was some good stuff. This was some bad stuff. Had a phone call with him. We talked about these types of things. And then you could sit there and track that over the course of maybe a year or two. And you felt really good about all those notes when you committed a player because you have this track record of tracking them and talking to them and trying to help them improve or pick at their game a little bit and see how they reacted to it. But yeah, I think it's easy to do. I also am of the mindset I like to have lots of emails and correspondence, and all that information are monthly check-in emails to me. So either way really works.
Okay. Okay, you're a player, you have 20 schools, you start emailing, you pique a couple schools' interest. Now I have an opportunity to be seen in front of a coach, whether it's at a showcase, at a camp. And so I have a face-to-face interaction with the coach. What does that look like? Like, how important is that? Like, what should they do? What are the do's and do nots? So again, like you're now actually meeting your potential future coach for the first time or, first couple times. What should you do? What should you say? What should you not do? What should you not say?
Sure. So, to me, this relates mostly to visits, to, getting on campus, because most of those conversations are probably on a college campus, whether it be unofficial, official, or in some capacity. It's something that I don't think a lot of players think about, because I've had all manner of mistakes happen in terms of parents show up and, are dressed inappropriately. Kids wearing, hey, I just showed up at Penn and I'm wearing a Lehigh shirt. Or I showed up at St. Mary's and my dad's in a Santa Clara hat. Or, things like that happen way more than you think. And what you really want to do is, if you're interested in that school, we had a kid show up in a Playboy shirt to a meeting once. And, it was just really, how serious does this kid take this and what we're doing? These are our jobs and our livelihood. And, you also are conveying your interest in the way that you show your body language, in the way that you communicate, in the way that you dress. Is this person even interested in our school? And, we have to take all those context clues, because for a lot of us, and I know unofficial visits are maybe a little bit of a thing of the past, but even in these phone calls, the way that you talk to a college coach is so important, because we have to gauge your interest and whether our future time is worth going into you as a player, or if, because that's going to go in my notes, or at least in the back of my head. Hey, they just didn't seem all that enthusiastic with their voice, or, they just didn't have any good questions to ask. They didn't have any questions, or, maybe they're just not that interested. And it might not be that you're not interested as a player, but I don't know that. I have to take the way that you're kind of slouching over, or, nervous in front of me, or, all these things. I have to be able to take that into context and judge whether I'm going to not only be able to coach you, but get you to commit, or even judge that you're all that interested in whether this visit or talk or whatever is worth my time. So, I would just say, think about how you want to be presented to somebody. And most people get it pretty right, but it's still, whether they just dress right, that's not the only thing. It's body language, it's talking, it's coming with a couple good questions. It doesn't have to be a lot of good questions, but each one of these places is really unique. Like, hey, what's it like to be a student athlete here? Is it, what makes you different? Why is Penn different than Princeton? Why is St. Mary's doing so well? Like, you guys seem to have this figured out right now. You're making Sweet 16s and almost undefeated seasons. Like, what's going on here? Those are great questions. So I think you don't have to do a lot, but there's easy ways to just screw it up that you don't probably think that you're screwing it up, if that makes sense. So just think about that whole picture of how you're presenting yourself, because college coaches will do it too. And you can do it on the flip side. If some college coach is only giving you 5 minutes, you can take that as a context clue as well and be like, okay, they don't seem all that interested. They're doing this, you're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing. Hey, he's, like staring over there while he's talking, it goes both ways. And I encourage players to think about it more than they probably do.
How about parents? What type of involvement should parents have at that point?
Yeah, well, for the most part, I think the more a player can run with the process and ask the questions, the better. Absolutely, parents are going to have great questions. Parent questions are way better and way more thoughtful than student athletes' questions. So you can be there to ask good questions. Certainly, a lot of the communication with parents typically revolves later in the process around finances. And that would be maybe the other big thing that I would say, is never limit your 15 to 30 schools on a price. You don't know about the price. At Penn, it's a huge price tag, but the average financial aid at Penn is $40,000. So the average student at Penn pays $30,000 for a $70,000 education. So you just don't know how it's going to play out. And, you don't know about academic scholarships. You don't know about, at St. Mary's, we had healthy academic scholarships that we could give students. And if you pair that with some scholarship money, all of a sudden it's a $68,000 education that's now 20 grand. And getting a really good private school education for 20 grand, it's probably worth looking at. So typically parents get involved in the initial process for me in asking good questions on behalf of their children and trying to encourage them to take ownership of the process. But most of the time, it's typically questions revolving around the finances, and we're happy to have those conversations. Those are the ones where we're trying to make it as advantageous as possible in terms of, situations and financial aids and scholarships and things like that. But
Okay.
we're also looking at the
I think that's
parents
super
every
useful.
bit as much
Um,
as we're looking at players. Absolutely.
Makes sense. How interested are you guys in like players' other endeavors? So players, the head of the debate team, and then also their, Greek club, whatever, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's a factor, but as a recruited student athlete, whether you're getting a spot on a team or scholarship money or whatever it is, it's pretty low on the priority list. The way that, and I like to use Penn because Penn was a really hard school to get into, the way that admissions will look at your application especially at high academic schools across the board, is you're an allotted spot for a student athlete. So your extracurricular is that sport. If you're a general applicant to the university, you are getting your application looked at by completely different people. And they are going to judge it. At Penn, it was, yeah, you do need extracurriculars if you're a regular applicant. But if you're a student athlete, it's probably the last thing that we look at. The most important thing that we would look at is test score. And the test score is, and I know testing isn't going on right now, and this might change, but the most important thing that they cared about was test score. And I'll tell you why. The reason is, and I know you asked about extracurriculars, and I basically kind of blew them off, is the most important attribute to a successful student athlete in college across the board at any university is actually your test score. And that really sucks because you've done 4 years of hard work in a classroom to get a GPA, and you're doing some extracurriculars, and you should. I'm not saying you shouldn't do them, but your extracurricular that you're probably putting the most amount of work in is your sport. And the biggest, again, predictor of your success in college isn't necessarily any of those things. It's what your test score is. And 90% of collegiate institutions out there are attaching academic money and application success to that test score more than anything. And again, that is subject to change with
Wow.
what's going
That's
on
super
in the world
interesting.
right now. Yeah, it was a large weighted portion of the application, maybe 2/3 of the weight at some high academic schools.
Wow. That's huge. So you're talking about applications now. Like I was just thinking as a student athlete, like nobody knows, what when you get offered a spot versus recruited walk on versus scholarship, what are the different things that a potential collegiate athlete could be offered by a coach? Different spots, I
Yes,
guess.
yeah. So uh, it's different at each school because
Do you guys have
some
a set
schools,
number of spots? Is there like a
yeah,
set
each
number of
school is. That's a great question for each coach because at Villanova, they might only have 24 men's soccer roster spots. That's it. That's all they can have. They can't have a roster of 40 like Virginia. Virginia typically carries a roster of 40 on the men's side. So that's part of you also
Oh
doing
my
your
God.
homework. Yeah, it's almost like an A and a B team. And you know what? Some NAI and other schools do that as well. They carry an A and a B team. So those are good questions for college coaches to sit there and say, how many are on your roster? Like Lipscomb, their assistant just told me they're going to probably have around 30 to 32 kids. So that situation is going to look a little bit different. I would say the average roster is probably 29, 30. And the reason is you probably want to have one extra player for every single spot. Probably have a couple walk-ons, 3 or 4 goalkeepers. Those types of things are really common, but it differs at every single university. And there's different things like walk-on spots are different than scholarship players, but only in the way that you're getting, part of the 9.9 or 14 athletic soccer scholarships that are provided. So getting a spot on a team is a spot on a team. It doesn't matter. And just because you come in with no scholarship money also doesn't mean that you won't end with scholarship money. You can always ask for more. It's rare that you can go in with scholarship money and it can get decreased. It's certainly possible, but rare. That's another question maybe you don't want to ask, but at least know about. So you can always earn more. We had a player that walked on at Lipscomb that by the end of his senior year, he was on a full scholarship, and it kept tearing up because he kept scoring goals and was a bigger and bigger part of the roster. So it certainly is a conversation, and that's the other thing college coaches will do is if your financial situation changes, you can always walk in and ask and talk and see what they say, to try to get more, or at least start that conversation. And the more you sit there and talk with a coach, the more you build that relationship, the more you engage in that process of them wanting to help you and you developing and engaging in your process of getting better and helping the team get better. And it becomes this really nice wheel that starts turning pretty quick.
Okay. You're a player, you're having conversations with coaches, they see you play, they like you. Do you ask them like, hey, I want to come here. Will you offer me a spot? Or does the coach do that first? How does that work? Should players be proactive and ask for spots, or should they just hold their breath and hope a coach reaches out to them and gives them a spot?
It depends. If a player just got seen once, you probably don't just straight up ask for a spot right after that. At places that have 40 on the roster, they can throw spots out pretty quick and have pretty quick recruiting processes. Maybe not even all the coaches need to see that player. At other institutions like Penn only had, in Ivy League schools, there's certain recruiting that's specific to Ivy League. It's in high academic schools. They only have a limited number of spots that they can offer, and they don't have any scholarship money. So for us, offering you a spot is like getting a scholarship, and we can only offer 7 or 8 a year. So that was, a really important decision to make. And I guess I would say to that, just start a process of communicating. Where are you at with players? Are you still recruiting for my class? If it's starting to get older, what are you looking for? And don't assume that these are stupid questions. Somebody could quit, transfer, get injured, not pan out as a recruit, not develop into the player that they thought that they were going to be. And that changes on a weekly basis. So just because something's going on for a couple months in a certain direction, it's never a bad thing to just continually email, update, ask good questions. Here's my schedule, and the responses will dictate how that process goes. Are you still looking? Yes, we are. We have some, they'll give you pretty real feedback. And even if they blow smoke and they want to just keep the process going with you and they're not ready to offer a spot, that's okay too, because you're still moving that process along. And the more they get to know you, the more comfortable they either are to sit there and say yes or no, or give you the feedback of, hey, we committed somebody else that's an interior center mid, and we think we're probably done recruiting for that spot now. Certainly when you only have 6, 7, 8 spots, hey, these are the positions we think we're going to recruit for. This is what we're looking for. We're done recruiting goalkeepers. Sorry, that's just where we're at. And they can give you that feedback. Whereas, again, when you're at a place that has a roster of 30 plus, they can sit there and keep looking at players and have a little bit more churn, which when I say churn, it's a little unfortunate sometimes for the people on those big rosters, because they'll probably cut 10% of them. But then they'll also be wanting to bring in more to try to, beef up that roster.
Okay. What do you think about phone calls versus emails? Obviously the email monthly, once or twice a month, should they be reaching out via phone? Does that replace an email? Is that in addition to an email? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, obviously phone calls can only happen now junior and senior year. So, that looks a little different for both the men's and the women's side. But I think email is probably the best way of continuing to update college coaches. It's just really easy, especially remotely. You got a million things going on. I'm operating this database, trying to track players. I'm going to just get this information in, this update straight in. If I want to have a conversation with somebody or talk to their coach or see more video, I can start doing that via email. And then, again, when it's permitted, jump on a phone call. Phone calls are great, but again, it might be a process that waits a little bit, because you're starting this process as a freshman or sophomore, or even now as a junior, and you're like, hey, I'm late to the game, but I really want to start this process. It's something that probably comes a little bit later once you've established some of that rapport with the coach and communication.
Okay. If you're a junior going into senior right now, so you're going to be a senior, you want to play college soccer, and you're just like kind of thought things were going to fall in your lap, what do you need to do to like right the ship or to have the best possible outcome in a year?
Yeah, well, it's never too late. And what I will say is it's absolutely never too late to just jump on your process right now and start, because even if you're sending an email update every month for the next 3 months and there's still this quarantine or no games, at least now you have a track record of showing interest. Hey, this is my name, my grad year, my academics. I'm really interested in your school and this program of study. I'd like to, learn more. Do you have some stuff I can watch about your program? Or maybe there's a couple questions I have for you. This is my highlight video. Let me know if you want to see more. I'm really interested. I know I'm late in starting this process. We're hoping to go to these Thanksgiving and Christmas events. I'll let you know and keep you in touch with, how things are going for us. And you just jump on that process. And then all of a sudden, and I said this to somebody who I was helping with earlier this week, then when it comes time for the Christmas games to be played and you have 6 months worth of history of communication, you're at the top of the list to be seen. And you've shown the most interest, and you're on that club team that's going down to that, and it's an easy decision for them to send a coach there and to put you at the top of the list to see you. But there's never a bad time to start. Obviously, the earlier you can do it, probably the better it will look. But why not just keep adding schools to your mix? If, hey, I keep emailing these 20 and I'm not getting a lot back, great, keep adding more, add more safety, just keep adding. And email all the coaches on staff, and email, twice a month. It's our job as coaches to manage this correspondence and track players. You're not bothering us. It's our job. You should be. If you're interested and you want to know more, bother us.
Very good stuff. So emails, we went through it. First 15 to 30 schools roughly. Can't start too early. Can't really over communicate. 1 to 2 times a month. Emails is great. Being specific, asking questions, developing a relationship with them. Highlight videos, shorter rather than longer. Recruiting websites they're another positive. Your own website's positive, but obviously if you don't have the means, not the biggest thing, doesn't sound like. And the whole idea of all this is to get coaches to watch you play. I mean, that's pretty much the goal, right, of these emails and the highlight videos, to pique interest, to watch you play, whether it's a showcase or whether it's a tournament or an ID camp. How many times does a coach need to see you play, do you think, to have like a decision, to make a decision on a player? And does a coach need to see a player play? Is that necessary?
Yeah.
Is a highlight video enough?
For domestic players, yeah, they need to see you play live. I would say it would be rare for a coach to be able, maybe they offer you a spot, but they can't offer you a scholarship, and it's late in the process, and it's COVID, and they're just trying to fill a roster, so they offer something. But to get scholarship money, to get a spot at a high academic school, at Penn, and this is pre-COVID, all three of us pretty much had to see that player or have them at camp, interact with them. All of us had to have a phone call with them, had to probably have them on campus and meet them a little bit. It was important that the more we all knew and all said, okay, we're going to take this one of 7 spots and allocate it to this person. We all feel good about it. Okay, go. Um, for us, that was a really big decision, as opposed to Lipscomb and St. Mary's. It was less important because we could commit a class of 20 if we wanted. There wasn't really restriction on, obviously we never did that, but hey, there's a class, we really need to get more. We don't feel good about what we have. We're going to start committing people left and right and building our coffers. So it depends, and it's a good thing to sit there and think about and ask good questions of coaches and staffs.
Okay, if you have 20 schools on your list, though, are you going to go to all their ID camps, or is it more like you base the interest based on the interest you're getting back, or maybe at a tournament where they're all going to be, you can kind of send them all messages, like to know to go to those ID camps. And also, how important are ID camps? Like maybe like I'm
Yeah.
talking the big ones that have 20, 30, 40 schools versus the small ones that's like the pin ID camp.
Yep. It's such a hard question to answer because they're all so different. If you go to the big one at either Indiana on the boys' side, there's like 450 kids or something, or Stanford, there's 300 kids. It's usually just one of those coaches at one of those. So it's obviously like if you're really interested in Stanford, go and get in front of their coaches. If that's your number one school, why wouldn't you? They're all going to be there. They're all going to get to know you. And there'll be some other schools. Like I went and worked Stanford a couple years in a row and try to cherry pick players out of it for Penn. So it's not a bad idea. If you go to the big conglomerated ID camp, it's very much like that appetizer thing. Hey, I saw him or her. She looked pretty good. Like, let's go see her play live with her team or get her to our ID camp now. And the thing I'd say about ID camps is go to the schools that are your top couple schools. Sure, why not? If that's really, really where you want to be and that's your top one, you might as well try. And then the next ones I would say is go to the coaches that call your coach, or go to the coach, the camps of the schools that they're showing you the most interest. It becomes a pretty easy decision. At Penn, if we really liked it, we actually recruited about 40 kids to our camps because we only had 3 ID camps. They were pretty small, and we really wanted like 40 players that we were actively recruiting to show up out of maybe 100 that we were really actively going after for our 7 or 8 spots. And that number is fluid. It moved pretty regularly in terms of what we needed and who we were interested in. But it was awesome if we called a kid and they're like, yeah, I'm interested. It's within means for me to come, and I have the time. That was great. And it was an easy sell because we were genuinely interested in that kid and wanted to see more, as opposed to just blanket emails, and you're not getting a phone call, or you're not, why I'm getting emails from all these programs and schools. What makes one different than the other is probably just that general interest. How much are they emailing, or has the coach called my coach, or, have I been able to get on the phone with them and gauge that real interest? Do they really know who I am? So, it's very different at each school too, because, and you've asked a really good question, and this is a hard one. Everyone uses their ID camps in different ways, but ultimately they're all trying to find players out of them. So going to ID camps is kind of like a little bit throwing a dart in the dark, but that has a great chance of success because you're in front of all the coaches of that institution, and you get to know them, they get to know you. Now you've all of a sudden sped that recruiting process of having a coach having to go see you, developing a relationship with that coach, and now feeling like they can commit to you and you can commit to them because you know them, you know the campus, you know their ideas, they know you, they've gotten to coach you, push you. We used to put players through the ringer at Penn and piss them off and challenge them and just see how they reacted to it, because that's basically what you're going to get for 4 years with us.
Yeah.
So it's really useful. Obviously, not everyone can go to every camp. They're all kind of different, but um, good in different ways.
One last question before you can finish whatever questions you think are valuable to answer. Okay, how do you know as a player like what level I should be shooting for? Because like when I coached middle school players, everyone's I want to go to UCLA, Stanford. It's like, guys, those are the schools that get
Yeah.
500 emails a day with recruits. So how do you like know what's realistic and like where they should aim? And yeah,
Yeah. Inside that list, there should absolutely be your dream schools, and go reach for them. Go, why not? Like, you're only going to regret it if you don't try. But then I would absolutely recommend having some safety schools. You can kind of gauge. I liked to look at, and this might sound really obvious, the people that were a year ahead of me. Am I about where that person is in terms of level? Where are they going? Where are they getting interest? Maybe even asking them, or somebody 2 years ahead of me, and just watching their processes. There's so much you can learn from somebody not only doing it well, but probably more importantly, not doing it well, and being like, man, I really wish I would have broadened my scope of schools, or looked for this kind of thing, or started my process earlier and not just waited for schools to come to me. And um, I think it's something that is hard to know, but the bigger and more broad your list of schools are that you start communicating with, the more you'll figure it out pretty quick. If certain type of
that's good.
school
Yeah.
starts emailing you back, you're pretty certain that you're in that bucket, as well as, hey, I think I'm of this level, and this is what the person ahead of me did. And also ask them questions. Go befriend somebody that's a year or two older that did this process. Ask them questions about what their college life is like, in season, out of season, what their recruiting process was like. Most of them will shoot you straight. And it's one of the reasons I really like helping Sacramento and Northern California players, is there's not a lot of information out there about this. And it's not as pretty of a process as everyone thinks it's going to be. It's kind of hard and uncomfortable, and you don't know where you fit in. And it's not like everyone gets scholarships, full scholarships to UCLA. That's just not realistic either. So, um, it is a little bit of a messy process.
We got like 2 minutes. Anything else you want to add that we missed, or any other points you want to kind of reiterate?
Um, no, I think the only other thing that I would touch on is kind of the in season and out of season stuff and the life of a student athlete. It's pretty full. It's a full-time job. It's, in season, it is only one day off a week, and you have 1 to 2 games a week, and you have training almost every other day, even if it's a light training or video, or, it's a pretty heavy load in terms of what that in season, and then again, even out of season looks like, in terms of, you might have some weekends off, but you're training and doing weights and really engaged in that process is kind of a year-round process. And again, I think some of the best things that you can do are go watch people that are older than you, go befriend somebody, ask them questions, and ask them really good questions, and try to figure out, again, one of those themes that I talked about was just ask a lot of people, start like really engaging in your process, drive your process, you know, like get in touch with these college coaches, talk to people that are already in college. What's it like? How is your process? What is this school like to play for? All those types of things are really, really important. And the more that a player engages in that process, the better the outcome typically ends up being for them, as opposed to just sitting there and waiting for it to come to you, or being too scared to ask questions or email or reach out.
Be
So
proactive.
yeah, and it's our jobs. And other players are happy to help as well, 99% of the time. So, really engage in it. And,
Okay.
if you wanted an A on a test, you would go study a lot. It's the same type of thing. You really want to like end up at a good place, go put in the work to do it.
Peter, awesome stuff. So valuable. if you're a college athlete and you watch this, I think you should watch it again. I know a lot of people are going to be watching it later too. So I really appreciate it, Peter. Yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, see you, Pete. Talk to you later.
Okay. All right. Bye.